Yo, what's up, dude? Yeah, I'm kind of an outdoorsman. Like, I love the cold, love the slopes, you know, ski, snowboard, ice climbing, cool mountain man stuff like that. And what I need is a coat. So what you got for me, dog? Of course, sir. But might I ask why you are at this fine luxury department store as opposed to a shop that sells items specifically designed for rough outdoor use? Glad you asked, dude. It's because I have a lot of money and I'm pretty dim. So back to the coat. I need something that makes me look kinda like a puffer fish and that shines in the sun like a dope ocean oil spill, killing all the wildlife for miles around. Finally, I'd also like it to be expensive enough that if I were to fall, or even just hit a rough corner on a table, the jacket would rip and lose all its value, causing me to hurl myself headfirst off the nearest icy cliff, which, as I've said before, I love to climb. So, tell me, bro, what you got like that? Why, yes, sir, I actually have just the thing. Have you ever heard of Moncler? But before we get going, I've looked into it and a very, very tiny percentage of you are actually subscribed to the channel. So it doesn't cost you anything. If you like the content I make, just click that subscribe button and I thank you profusely. That's right, guys. Today we are talking about the one and only Moncler. And don't get it twisted, despite me having some fun with them in the intro, I am a huge Moncler fan. I've got a bunch of random Moncler pieces we're gonna look at over the course of this video, and I also wanted to look into how this luxury ski brand became a hype beast icon. And here's another thing, there are a million fucking Monclers. If you go to any online luxury boutique and scroll through the brand names they have in stock, there will be a sea of Moncler brand names. There's Moncler, Moncler Grenoble, Moncler Genius, Moncler Gamme Rouge, Moncler Gamme Bleu, it just goes on and on. Moncler is the movie Split in fashion brand form. But we'll get to all that. First, let's talk about where Moncler came from in the first place. That's right, Professor Low Luxury is heading back to the blackboard to give you young pupils a lesson in drip history. So the name Moncler is kind of a portmanteau, based off the village Monestier de Clermont, which is the village from Beauty and the Beast. I don't know, probably. The company was founded in 1952, making quilted sleeping bags and tents. And no joke, every time I research a European luxury brand, it turns out that they started off by making some weird kind of functional items. Make sure you stick around for next week's video when I find out that Valentino got their start making travel pillows and antacids. So it's safe to say that Moncler do have some legit mountaineering cred. In 1954, they made down jackets that were used on the expedition to conquer the mountain K2. And no, this wasn't just a mountain man Moncler photo shoot that they set up for GQ. This was legit mountaineering. And apparently the gear that Moncler made for it was legit too. So for a couple decades, Moncler really were a rugged outdoor brand, far from the freezer aisle at Whole Foods on a trophy wife, which is where I usually see them now. In order for that down jacket to make its way from the mountains onto that surgically crafted bosom at Whole Foods, we've got to fast forward another couple decades. In 1968, the Winter Olympic Games were held in Grenoble, for all intents and purposes, Moncler's hometown. As such, it was only right that the hometown hero brand sponsored the French downhill ski team and the Jamaican bobsled team. Except they only actually sponsored one of those, but I will never say which. So this sponsorship doesn't seem that far from the mountain outfitting they were doing before, but keep in mind that we're now into the television era. That's right, the Moncler Revolution was indeed televised. Mesmerized by the shining images on their televisory appliances, the world took notice of these colorful lacquered down coats. And that was the launching platform for the company onto the world stage. But even so, they were still an outdoor brand. This is an inexact comparison, but you could say they were kind of like a European North Face. Highly respected within fashion and tangential to that world, but definitely not a part of fashion. I mean, think of the biggest designers of the 1970s. Saint Laurent, von Furstenberg, Lagerfeld. They were doing formal wear, and there's no way they were gonna let a disgusting down jacket take their place. I mean, where's the leather and where are the exotic furs and crystals? I mean, the jackets were made of nylon. Plus, plastic? And do you expect me to put it on my skin? Ugh, good day, sir. Even so, their popularity continued to rise until the 1980s when it truly exploded. The designer Chantal Thomas reworked their down jackets to finally play with the big boys in that high fashion sphere. She added elements like fur trims and satin, which meant that the richest socialites had something that they could wear to the Alps on vacation and be comfortable while also flaunting their absurd amounts of wealth. But France, despite its fashion pedigree, is no Italy. That's where the powerhouses live. In 2003, the Italian entrepreneur Remo Ruffini bought the brand, and you have to consider this the time when the brand fully made the transition into that high fashion space. Sure, they still did flashy sponsorships of big expeditions, but it was really more for show at this point. I mean, no serious climber or mountain man was buying Moncler right now. It just didn't make sense anymore. Oh man, I just really love climbing mountains, but it just doesn't make me any money. For that reason, I'm gonna go out and buy a $1,500 coat. So they lost the mountain climbers. Oh guys, we barely knew ye. Therefore, Moncler needed a new clientele. And if they wanted to grow, it needed to be a clientele that was willing to spend the big bucks. And thus, Moncler Gamme Rouge was born. That's right guys, we're getting into the sublines. Get ready for a mind-bending series of modifications to the Moncler name, because Moncler loves starting a new brand for every little idea they have. Moncler Gamme Rouge was the haute couture line for the brand. But Givenchy Couture is still Givenchy. Same with Gucci, Valentino, like pretty much everyone else. But no, Moncler has to give their couture line its own special subline name. Because like I said, they like having 60 sublines going at a time. While Gamme Rouge is certainly important in terms of the brand's continued move into luxury fashion, far more interesting, at least to me, is the move they made just a couple years later with the introduction of Gamme Bleu. That line was designed by a guy you might have heard of. His name is Thom Browne. You haven't heard of him? What are you doing on my channel? Go read a fashion book. Go! Why are you still here? You're right. That was really elitist of me. I'm so sorry, dude. Fashion is for everyone, you're right. Man, I'm sorry about that. I don't know what got into me. Thom Browne is a fucking genius designer and one of my favorites. He likes to take kind of stuffy corporate styles, but then turn them on their head in these avant-garde, gender-bending ways. And to Moncler's credit, they really let Thom Browne do his thing. He did do outerwear for them, of course, but the core of his collections were around his defined tailoring with those private school vibes. Basically, your average Moncler Gamme Bleu look screamed the original shitty boyfriend in the rom-com who ends up getting dumped for the less conventionally attractive but cooler guy. But the asshole looked damn good doing it. Thom Browne ended up popularizing perhaps the definitive menswear item for the house, outside of their staple coats, of course. I'm speaking about the polo shirt. I've got one from Thom's Gamme Bleu line, and I love how it combines elements of classic Moncler and Browne himself. Of course, the definitive piece of any Moncler polo is the embroidered badge. You gotta have some way to show people that you spend your money unwisely, am I right? And then you get another favorite for the brand's polos, the contrasting colored trim. This one actually uses red, white, and black trim, which are also the colors of Thom Browne's signature trim. So for many years, Gamme Bleu created looks that filled a really important void in the Moncler product offerings, beyond just outerwear. Just a year after introducing Gamme Bleu, Moncler created yet another subline. And guys, we aren't gonna spend a ton of time on each of these because we'd be here all week. Because like I said, they have 60 fucking sublines. Okay, I'm done. Let's move on. So they created a new line, and this one, interestingly, actually filled another void that had popped up within the past few years. I feel like it's a common theme that Moncler are like those guys on the boat that keeps popping leaks, and every time they cover one, a new one pops up, and by the end they're just like playing Twister on the boat, covering every hole with their arms and legs and everything. So the line was called Moncler Grenoble, and it was created to make more of that mainline classic winter and ski wear. Weren't they already making that? Well, sure, but their focus had moved more into the fashion space, and apparently they wanted these pieces to have their own special brand to live within, which is fair enough. Now, I do have a piece I want to show you here. It's not Moncler Grenoble, it's just vintage Moncler, but it is just a classic ski piece from the brand that I love so much because it's like from a simpler time. It is a white cable knit quarter zip sweater. It doesn't have the ostentatious branding that you see on tons of their stuff nowadays. It's just classic luxury. And it's an added bonus that it basically makes me look like a James Bond villain who has a secret lair in the snow-covered mountains of Switzerland. This is the kind of piece that I keep around because it's something that Moncler will probably never make again. And let's talk about why. So with the Gamme lines and Grenoble, Moncler was chugging along nicely for a few years there, until some interesting industry headwinds started to push on them that made them have to make some pretty drastic changes. In a way, Moncler was being squeezed from two directions. They were in that Star Wars trash compactor scene, and trust me when I say you do not want to see a Moncler coat pop along with all of somebody's guts and viscera inside. So above them, the luxury conglomerates like Kering and LVMH were pumping out tons of luxury goods. In case you didn't know, those two companies are like hella important and powerful and shit because between them they own Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Dior, Alexander McQueen, and only like 3,000 other huge fashion brands. And Moncler were also getting squeezed from below, with streetwear brands like Supreme and Palace catching up with them. You may not see the similarities there, but Moncler had actually become really huge in the streetwear scene. And when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. Athleisure had become the word of the day, and Moncler's luxe outerwear fit the bill perfectly, which led to them being repped hard by rappers, athletes, and influencers. I mean, the YouTuber J Station wears Moncler. You know you're a status symbol when the fuckboy to end all fuckboys is wearing your shit. But suddenly, the Moncler business model was looking kind of outdated. They needed some way to stay both relevant and cool while also creating enough product and sales to stay afloat. So they made some drastic decisions. They ended both the Gamme Rouge and Gamme Bleu sublines, replacing them with Moncler Genius. The Genius line is actually kind of hard to describe. It's basically an overarching house for a continuing series of collaborations. Instead of sticking with single lines designed by single designers like Tom Brown, instead they have a continuous revolving door of fashion and streetwear talent to create collections based on the Moncler archives. As part of the Genius project, Moncler has enlisted a veritable who's who of the industry. Craig Green, Jonathan Anderson of J.W. Anderson and Loewe, Fragment, Alix's Matthew M. Williams, Pier Paolo Piccoli of Valentino, Francesco Ragazzi of Palm Angels, and more. With Genius, Moncler has found a way to cater to every possible customer. They figured out that no single designer, no single line, and no single coat is for everybody. So instead, they have a designer for everybody. You want a true luxury piece? Get one from the Valentino collab. You want cheeky designer pieces? Jonathan Anderson for you. You more of a Bape or Sakai kind of guy? Then go with Fragment. How about designer streetwear? Then Palm Angels have you covered. This also gives them a way to compete with both the luxury conglomerates pushing down on them and the streetwear brands nipping at their heels. They get to flood the market with coveted expensive pieces and do it in continuous drops familiar to any Supreme or Palace fan. So really, the entire project is fucking genius. And there's no pun intended there. Truly, but I'm gonna take a puns when a puns appears, okay? Does that mean every collection is perfect? Hell no. Some people get it spot on, like Francesco Ragazzi, who clearly has a defined midpoint between the Palm Angels and Moncler aesthetics completely figured out. But then you get the Alix collection, which was so phoned in that Matthew M. Williams probably literally called in the designs for the collection while being fed grapes in some Roman villa by Kylie Jenner or something. But there are also collections like the ones they've done with Craig Green, which are really more
artistic avant-garde sculptures than they are functional garments. I think if you actually tried to wear one, people would like mistake you for a performance artist and start throwing quarters at you. But that's why Genius exists. There's something for everyone. As long as you've got a spare grand or two, that is. I've got a piece from the Genius collaboration with Fragment Design, and it really looks more like a Supreme piece than a Moncler piece. It's very much by design though. There are a lot of customers who wouldn't buy the typical Moncler t-shirt, but this, with its minimalist print and off-white style hang tag, sure, this will work for them. And as I was preparing for this video and choosing which pieces to show off, I realized something. It turns out I'm actually a Moncler polo whore. I truly did not realize how many I had, which I guess is as sure a sign as any that I have way too many clothes. So 2 of these are mainline Moncler, and 2 are from the Gamme Bleu line. It's also split 2 and 2 between long sleeves and short sleeves. I will say though that they have served me well. Actually, they've served me well when I can actually get them to fit. We haven't discussed this yet, but I'm pretty sure Moncler uses like people with stunted growth as their sample models because their sizing standards are well and truly bonkers. I wear a size small from most brands, but as far as Moncler are concerned, I'm apparently the size of like a silverback gorilla. I can sometimes make a medium from them fit me, but more often than not, I have to go with like a large. My Gamme Bleu polo fits me great, and it's an extra large. A fucking extra large. Moncler be out here giving people like body dysmorphia. So be careful out there, guys. And be careful of all the fakes. Moncler has to be one of the most faked brands out there. There's like a small army of guys out there in Africa selling reps of their shirts and t-shirts. And that's not even a joke. When I first got into fashion and didn't know a thing about anything yet, some guy in the Congo scammed me out of $50 for a Moncler shirt. It's one of those situations where I look back and think, yeah, you really should have seen that coming and this one's kinda on you because you're a dumbass, but still, it happens. In the end, Moncler has set themselves up really well for continued success. With Genius, they have product offerings for every possible customer under the sun. And thanks to a little witty bitty thing called COVID, their product offering is more relevant than ever. While most luxury brands were primarily focused on evening wear and other high-end pieces, Moncler have been doing loungewear for decades. In 2020, suddenly every brand was rushing to make as many sweatpants as humanly possible, but Moncler already had them in stock. Perhaps my favorite Moncler piece is this simple little bomber track jacket kind of thing. It does everything I want out of a Moncler piece. Casual, comfortable, and kind of preppy. So while all the other brands play catch up, I'll be here chilling in Moncler, the brand who is here the whole time. And with that, let me know your thoughts in the comments, take a look at this other video on screen, subscribe to my channel, like this video, and I'll see you guys next time.